might have been looking at from the materials, the Bill of Rights and the tools. And as mentioned, we'll have an opportunity to win a copy of the book. So that's very exciting, a hard copy. So we'll come to that in a bit. But yeah, let's start with hearing from you, Delphine. So I'm going to spotlight you so everybody can see you properly. And the first question that we have for you is, in this like world of accelerating technology and fast learning, why did you and the team choose to slow down?
Thanks, Ruth, and hello, everybody. It's nice to virtually meet you. I'm seeing some familiar faces popping in the virtual library, so it's great to see you here. And if we haven't met yet, I'm Delphine Dalagata. I'm part of the Learning Innovation Program at the International Training Center of the International Labour Organization, which stands for ITCILO. And being in the Learning Innovation Program, we're constantly looking kind of at the edge of innovation, what's coming next, future thinking. But we've also realized that you can't always think forward without also kind of thinking back and pausing once in a while. And we're based in Turin, Italy. If you're not familiar with Turin, Italy, it's also the headquarters of the Slow Food University and Slow Food movement, which was born back in the 1980s out of kind of a rebellion of a McDonald's that was going to be built by the Spanish Steps in Rome. So it was everything kind of countering the fast food tradition and promoting the good, clean, fair, let's say, production and consumption of food. So that's evolved into kind of a wider slow movement. We've heard about kind of slow fashion, slow media. And so taking inspiration from our, let's say, geographic location, being in a training institution, we were looking at how we could actually slow down learning consciously. So that's a little bit of the why behind this publication.
Thanks so much, Delphine. And so how did you adapt this kind of slow concept to learning specifically then?
So I'm going to backtrack a little bit, actually share the first job that I had after university was teaching English. And I was teaching English in a small town named Cremona in Italy, still in Italy. If anyone has heard of Cremona or perhaps of the Stradivarius violin, go ahead and say a yes, perhaps in the chat, so I can gauge, let's see, the knowledge already in this virtual room. But Cremona is a small town right underneath Milan. And it's quite famous. Oh, I see someone actually was in Cremona earlier this year. It's quite famous due to a violin maker by the name of Antonio Stradivari, who actually was the violin maker in the 15th century, who made now the Stradivarius violin, that is quite famous and going on auction for millions and millions of dollars. And I was teaching English actually at the International School of Violin Making. So it's quite, let's say, a special place. And I have just a little kind of peek into the workshop here that you're seeing on the screen. There's about 100 violin makers that are studying in this international school, and they're given, let's say, a slab of wood, and from that, they're creating an instrument, which is fascinating to see them work at the workbench. And it's very tedious work, very detail-oriented, as you can imagine, requiring a high level of handicraft, knowledge of physics, musicology. And it triggered this reflection on learning and how one learns and applies their learning, as here it was inherently slow. There was even a sign in the workshop. If you don't speak Italian, it says, let's say, fai con calma, like basically do things calmly. Gli errori si vedono, il tempo no. You can see errors, but you can't see time. So it was this, let's say, reminder for all of the, let's say, apprentice violin makers to take their time and to be precise in their work, not rush through it, as those errors can be seen as they are kind of permanently built within the wood. So I actually brought the Learning Innovation Program, my team, to this school and this workshop to kind of start this brainstorming on what slow learning could look like in our context and in the training center. So perhaps to check in with you all, I wanted to launch a quick poll to see what you think. A newly graduated violin maker from this school, how many violins do you think he or she would make? So you can vote. Do you think it's 1 instrument, 4 instruments, 10 instruments, or 20 instruments? So you can vote, and we can start looking at some of the answers. I see almost everyone has voted. And it looks like we're at a tie between 1 and 4 instruments. So it looks like you actually are quite attuned with the violin making profession. As a newly graduated violin maker, they make 1 instrument a year, but a more professional violin maker would make about 4. And that is their livelihood. They live off those 4 instruments. So it's quite, I'd say, a fascinating profession and art form. And it's what triggered then our discussion, let's say, behind slow learning and how we got inspired from a musical instrument to training.
Thanks, Delphine. Very cool to hear. And I also love the fact that you took your team there. I think we can learn a lot from that in the event, going to like different domains and things outside of our context and learning what's kind of applicable. So last question, and then we'll be going over to everybody for some discussion. So just wondering, like you're a UN colleague and you've published a book, which I'm sure many of us will find amazing and inspiring. So what did that take? Any tips for us?
Sure. I mean, like anything, it's all about teamwork. So after we had this collective study visit, if you will, in Cremona and diving into the world of violin making, we actually brought together a group of slow advocates. So these were individuals who either are writing and researching the slow movement. You see kind of Carl Honoré, Jennifer Rauch on that list that are published authors in the field, as well as members working in learning and in training. There are multiple members from our team. I see Nicole is also participating in this webinar, so she's also a featured member of the creation behind this book. And we brought together these slow gurus, if you will, slow advocates, for a collective brainstorming session. We kept it quite open. It was a day-long session to kind of see what the slow food movement, the slow movement could look like if applied to learning. In parallel to this, we actually had launched also a art competition, a local art competition called Poster Heroes, that generated over 50 graphic interpretations of what slow learning could look like. If you go to posterheroes.org, you can see the full collection of these posters. So from, let's say, the more literary contribution of these slow gurus and then the visual contribution of these artists, we were able to craft, let's say, the bulk of the book, which was focusing on a series of essays reflecting on the question, what does slow learning mean to you? So if you look at the central part of the book, you'll see there's often a slow poster and then a contribution from one of the authors that you just saw on the previous slide. And then on the kind of corner sides of that bulk section on the essays, we have a bill of rights that was brainstormed during that collective session after the visit in Cremona, that were kind of guiding, let's say, learners' rights to slow down, looking at direction, not necessarily destination, open to raising your hand, asking critical questions, reminding learners that they can go at their own pace. We're not imposing, let's say, a fast or slow model. The right to unplug, if we're looking at digital learning. Mobile learning, you also have the right to switch off and go back to traditional writing on pen and paper. The right to change your mind and change your learning path and build it based on the changes that are happening around you. The right to take a break, because sometimes a break going swimming or walking in the mountains can generate more ideas than staying in front of your computer screen. The right to make mistakes and learn from mistakes. The right to leave sometimes things unfinished and revisit them in the future. The right to unlearn and forget. So that means kind of the whole kind of also reskilling, unskilling tendency. And then finally, the right to slow down. So taking a step back. So this kind of framed, let's say, what learners and trainers have the right to when it comes to training and facilitation. And then we have the series of essays. And finally, to make things concrete, the book also elaborates 10 slow tools that, again, were crowdsourced through the brainstorming session and other discussions that we were having in parallel, that cover a wide range of both participatory and individual learning tools to experiment with slow learning. And if you are working in training and in facilitation, these could be applied to your perhaps future courses, or if you are yourself a learner and want to create more time for slowing down, reflecting, then these could also be tools that you can apply in your own day-to-day lives. So I'll let you look at those perhaps in your own time. I saw Sabrina also shared the links to the full book, which you can download and dig deeper into. But that kind of frames the structure of the book and how we made it come to life.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Delphine. Really amazing to hear and a really cool story. So thank you for sharing that with us. So now comes the moment, and I put that in the chat, but I think these, like the Bill of Rights, I know it's on learning, but I think there's such a strong connection between learning and innovation and change. And just in terms of like the fellowship pilot we've just been doing, I know lots of people are in the room who've been part of it. I think that topic keeps coming up around slowing down, creating space. How do you create space to think differently, to collaborate differently, etc. And also, I think loads of those things could just be applied directly in terms of making mistakes, leaving things unfinished, lots of these ideas. So I really like that link as well and just wanted to make it explicit. So yeah, so the next part of our session, we are going to jump into groups and unpack this a little bit together. So we did think of doing 1, 2, 4 all, and then thanks to Joanna and also reflecting on it, simplifying, slowing down. Let's keep it simple instead of trying to